Hello, I'm Michel Gagné, and you are listening to the Real-Time Visual Effects Podcast, where wizards reside.
You have a gift. You have a passion for creation. There's something inside you that wants to express itself, and that something has led you to explore the world of visual effects, a place where magic happens, and the only limitation is your imagination. All the greatest artists in the world started somewhere, learning and growing into the people they are today. You being here is the first step to building your legacy as an artist. Learn from the best and brightest in the real-time visual effects community. Sharpen your skills and be your best self. Today's interview is with Nick Seavert. He's the founder of JangaFX, a studio behind some of the VFX industry's latest tech with products like VectorRayGen and EmberGen, a real-time fluid simulation program. Nick has been hard at work investing education and tools to make real-time artists more efficient in their roles. I'm super excited to talk with him, so without further ado, let's jump into the interview.
Here is your host, Travis McCallum.
Hey everybody, this is Travis and I have Nick Seavert. He's an entrepreneur, founder of JangaFX, and a VFX artist that's worked at studios like Funcom, Voiced Interactive, and Osiris Studios. Nick, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I am just chilling in my room today.
Yeah, we were just talking, you were playing some Legends of Runeterra earlier.
Yep, I'm playing some Legends of Runeterra, seeing all the effects wizardry that people are talking about, and it's a pretty cool game. You guys should check it out. They're doing great work over there at Riot.
So before we start jumping into your current endeavors with JangaFX, I wanted to open the floor and ask, how did you get started in visual effects?
Yeah, so whenever I got started in visual effects, it was back in 2006, and I was actually messing around with the Half-Life 2 source code, and they had some hard-coded particle systems in there, and I wanted more sparks and blood and stuff like that. And so I started coding and playing around with that as a young wee lad, trying to mod Half-Life 2. And then in 2007, they came out with the Source Engine particle editor, and with that, it was a whole new world of editing particles and effects. And at the end of it, I think I was like one of just a handful of people, 2 or 3 people who knew how to use the Source Engine particle editor. And with that, every mod team wanted me and all that kind of stuff. And so I just took on as many mods as I could work on. And I have quite a lot of mods under my belt at this point. So yeah, so I did a lot of visual effects for mods, and that's how I got my start.
Of the mods that you did, was there any that stood out to you that were your favorites?
Oh, for sure. No More Room in Hell. I don't know how many downloads it's gotten, but I think it's got over like 5 million downloads or something. It might even be something even more ridiculous than that. We were one of the first 10 games on Steam Greenlight, just as a Half-Life 2 full total conversion mod. And I did all the VFX for it, and it went really well. We got featured in PC Magazine and all kinds of crazy stuff. So that was like my first big thing that actually happened. It's like, lots and lots of people have seen this thing, and so it was a good success for me. Made me really proud. I'm still proud of it today.
And for those of us that have never seen No More at Hell, can you kind of describe to us what it's about?
Yeah, so No More Room in Hell. It's a really hardcore zombie survival game. One bite, you're dead type thing. And, it's all about, doing objectives and all that stuff. And so I had to do explosions and headshot blood and all kinds of gore and just lots of stuff. It was a fun thing to work on.
That's cool, man. It's really cool. So we know all about visual effects, but one area that we don't know much about is real-time visual effects. And I wanted to kind of hear from you in your own words, what is real-time visual effects mean to you?
I think that real-time visual effects means that it is visual effects that's running right there in front of you, 30 frames a second or more, hopefully. And typically it's within a game, right? It's real-time visual effects. I don't know, it's a hard thing to describe, but I guess if you're sitting there waiting for renders, that is not real time. And if you're viewing it, right there, right in front of you, it's just like every single time it's different and it's doing its thing, then I would say that's probably real time. So a video game definitely encompasses real time VFX.
Cool. So when you started off in the industry, what were some things that you wish you had known starting out in visual effects?
I wish I'd known how to make textures. That was the big thing. Like whenever I was modding and stuff, I was relying on Valve's textures and things like that. And even once I started getting into like, some paid freelance stuff, they might have had like a little library of things or whatever. And I just sucked at textures. And so I wish that starting out that I had put more time and effort into that. But since I had a whole library available to me, I didn't put much effort into it for years and years. So it eventually caught up with me.
So now that textures are really important, what have you done to really kind of learn how to do textures?
I guess just look up, like FX textures or whatever on Google Images and then figure out how to paint that kind of thing and just spend time in Photoshop. That's about it. Just spending time in Photoshop and just trying to figure out, hey, how did they paint this? How did they make this? And yeah.
Okay, cool, man. So right now, what are you most curious about? What are you checking out in the world? It doesn't have to be visual effects, but
yeah, I think that what I'm most curious about in the general world. So this is a two-part question for me. So in the world, probably bow making, right? So making long bows out of wood. So bending sticks and making them fling arrows. That's my low-tech thing that I'm really curious about right now. And so it helps me get off the computer because I'm on it all day long. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm really curious about. And in terms of visual effects, I'm really curious about seeing where we can take volumetric stuff, right? Volumetric effects and how we can integrate that into the real-time pipeline. As you may know, that is our specialty at JangaFX. So we're trying to figure out how to get that stuff in a game. And that's what I'm most curious about, to see how we can do it.
And for those of us that don't really know what volumetric means as opposed to, I guess, non-volumetric, what's the difference?
In general, if you have particle effects in a game, it's typically placed on a sprite. So, a 2D plane. That plane is facing the camera, and you spawn a couple of those in 3D space. And it looks, you kind of fake the depth of the particle and things like that. And if you go into it, you can probably see that it's just, 2D planes. There's no real depth to that effect. But with volumetrics, it's actual, a 3D, I don't want to say object, but we'll just say object. It's a 3D volume, right? It's volumetrics.
Yeah, man.
Within that scene, and you can go inside of it, right? It can, occlude objects and, just do things that a 2D sprite can't. That's a bit of a tough question. Even though I'm dealing with it all day long, I don't really think about, what is a volumetric?
No,
that's the best way to describe it. It's clouds, actual clouds that you're flying through in an airplane. That's a volumetric.
Cool, man. Cool. So obviously you've gone through good times and bad times, and we always seem to learn from our failures. So I'm just curious, what's something that maybe you failed at, and how did you handle that when it happened?
Something that I have failed at, I would probably say that's a difficult one. I think that just in general, failing at making the right particle effects or whatever, I guess like something that's wispy, right? I really, really suck at wispy type effects, and I would say that is definitely something I found out whenever I was working at a certain studio, right? I don't know if I can particularly say it, so let's just say a studio, right? I was working at a studio. They required some wispy effects and stuff, and I just could not get it right. The art director's like, hey, man, this thing, it's cool, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. And I just couldn't do it. I tried and tried and tried. And by that time I was like, okay, I've got other stuff to do. Sorry. We'll have to figure something else for this. So that's one thing that I failed at in like a production setting. It's just wispy type things and ethereal stuff. It's a big bad point for me.
So what was the learning experience from that? Did you just kind of find these are my strengths from the effects I enjoy and do best at making versus the other ones?
Yeah. And so I think that that with that, I definitely found out that I'm better at, more realistic stuff and, explosions and all that kind of thing, and just stuff like that. But like whenever it comes to magic and ethereal stuff, not really my strong point. It's something that I really should practice more. And I mean, I guess the thing that I did learn is how not to paint ethereal stuff or how not to generate textures and stuff for it. So that goes back to what I wish I had learned way back when, is learning how to make these textures. So
gotcha. So when you're looking at your own work or maybe the work of others, what are some of the things that you're looking for?
I would say that the two most important things to me whenever I'm looking at, my own work or someone else's work is color and time. Or timing, rather, making sure that the effects feel powerful and strong, based on, whatever the effect is trying to convey to the player. And then the color, is it a good thing that I'm near this thing? Is it a bad thing that I'm near this thing? And so definitely timing and color are the two most important things that I look for. Shape is kind of important, but whenever I'm dealing with realistic effects, I don't really care too much about shape. I just want it to blow up.
For sure, man.
And so, but yeah, definitely color and timing are the two most important things to look for. Because if your timing is off, it's just going to suck.
Can you give us maybe an example of an effect that you've had to basically gauge that off of?
A specific effect with timing, there was an effect that I did for a game called Infra. And there was this fireball that you had to run from that was chasing you down this tunnel. So there's this gas leak and there's a big fireball. And timing was extremely important for that effect to make sure that in most cases the player could run away from it, and then make sure that the player is not in the fire and living, right? And so we had to time that effect really well, and the ignition and all that stuff, and it had to look good, right? The player had to say, "Oh crap, this thing is blown up. I've got to get out of here." And so it just had to be a really nice, cohesive experience for the player, because it was a big pivotal moment in the game. So
yeah,
that's definitely where timing comes in. And then another example is just a grenade. If you throw a grenade, it needs to be snappy and explosive. And as soon as you see enemies dying or getting hurt or ragdolling or whatever, that explosion needs to have already encompassed them. So definitely that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So kind of looking at the macro scale here, outside just kind of the particles themselves, in the visual effects industry, specifically for real time, what are some of the big trends that you're seeing out there in the market right now?
I think that some of the trends that I'm seeing are probably on the tools end, right? Things are getting more technical. Things are getting more complex. Both Unreal and Unity that are both competing against each other with, the VFX Graph and Niagara, and they're trying to give, more technical hook-in points for code and things like that, and making the effects more integrated within the game. A tree falls down and then it knows that it hits this certain rock, so it needs to crack the rock in half or whatever, and, just stuff like that to make effects more integrated into the world. I think that is going to be a big trend, dealing with player interactions and being able to make more complex effects. I think that's definitely a trend. And so I think we're going to have to grow our brains to figure out, and keep up with this next generation stuff. So I definitely see that as one of the big trends.
So jumping over to JangaFX, you started your own company. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
So, I'm the founder and CEO of JangaFX. We have a team of 6 people, and at this point, we're making tools for real-time VFX artists. And I started this company because I was just angry at all the third-party tools out there. No bad feelings for all the tools out there. I won't name them, but you know who they are, all the big dogs out there. And I liked their tools, and I thought they were great, but they were too slow for me. Or if I'm making visual effects that need to be fast and I need quick iteration time, well, I don't want to wait 12 hours for a render, And so in this case, our flagship product, I would call it, is EmberGen. And it allows you to simulate and render explosions, fire, smoke, all that stuff in real time. And within just a couple hours, you can have tested, 20, 30, 40 flipbook iterations where it would have taken you weeks to do that in other software. And so the big problem that we're solving is, let me simulate and render this thing for 12 hours, and then you do it. And then you say, holy crap, this looks like garbage in my game. And you have to do it again. And then it's another 12 hours, another 12 hours, another 12 hours. And so the other thing is you're using tools made for the film industry, right? And so you have to bend all these tools to your will to fit, into flipbooks and sprite sheets and all that stuff. And it's not really a workflow that's built for real-time VFX. And so we're just trying to streamline the process. And we're one of the first companies out there to really try and hone in on the real-time aspect of creation and get that kind of stuff out there for everybody.
Yeah, you make a really great point, saving time for artists. I know I've been in Maya or 3ds Max and I've had to render for hours on end. Sometimes just go grab a cup of joe and come back. But I'm curious, the word Jenga, where did that come from? What's the backstory behind that?
So back in my wee lad days, I think it's like 2006, YouTube had come out and I'd noticed it. I was like, I want to make an account on this thing. And I randomly typed Jenga Loimp as a name. That was just the name that stuck with me all throughout my teenage years. And one day somebody was like, hey man, you should just call yourself JangaFX because, Jenga is short for Jenga lump, and effects that's what you do. So just do that. And I thought about the alias for a while, and I was like, you know what? Why don't I make a company called that? Because I don't know what else to call this thing. So no real meaning behind it. It has nothing to do with the game Jenga, which a lot of people, they actually try and spell their name that way and type it into Google. So luckily Google knows what they're trying to search for.
Yeah, man. So do y'all do actual visual effects at your company?
The only actual visual effects that we do, like in terms of in-game stuff, is just cinematics that we make to show off our tools. No studio contacts us and says, hey, well, they do contact us, but we turn them down. we say, okay, we don't actually do visual effects. We just sell the tools to do it. So yeah, we try and keep up with the trends and stuff like that. And we're learning Niagara and the VFX graph and all that to make sure that our tools work with it and stay within the circle of knowledge. But other than that, we don't really do any visual effects other than just what we need to do to make some promo material and stuff like that.
So tell me if I'm stepping on any toes, but I was just curious if you could kind of run me through what your visual effects process is, kind of from inception to completion. What are those steps like, maybe in your personal work, or maybe how you went through the pipeline at your previous studios?
Yeah, so I can talk from just say like an actual studio production experience. I don't know if this is the same for every studio because I was the sole VFX artist at this studio. So I kind of had to make up my own process. And so the gist was the designers, they say, hey, we want to make this thing. And so for example, let's just say you've got a player and he's casting some kind of ice spell from his hand or something towards the enemies. And so then from there, designers, they would say, okay, this is what we want. Make us some mock-up, just crap for us to throw in here and get the hookups for you. And so I would make some, just some garbage effects and say, okay, here we go. This is good enough for now. And then from there, the art director, if they were capable and they had the time to divvy it out to concept artists, I would try and get some kind of concept art behind that so they know the shapes and the colors that they're looking for. And at the very least, I would just try and get a color palette that they were looking for. Whenever I was working here, we didn't have a style guide because I didn't have time to make one. It was just go, 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 go. But in this case, after I got the initial, thoughts behind it, if I couldn't get concept art, I would schedule a meeting and say, okay, what do we want? What's the radius on this kind of thing? And we'd sit in with designers and talk about the effect. And so then after that, I would actually start working on the effect. And so, first thing is, okay, well, I need to create some textures if I don't have them. So I would, start penning the textures and, say, okay, and then, kind of break down what are the core components of this ice spell coming from the player's hand. Okay, well, you've got some stuff on the hand, so I'm probably going to need to, make a shader to change the player's hand to some icy thing. Right, do some kind of projection mapping or something on the player's hand. And then I'm going to need, maybe some warm-up particles for this ice effect, pre-cast stuff. Then we need the actual cast, animation from animators. And then I need to time my effects with that kind of thing, in the animation sequencer. And then, I need maybe the projectile or the stuff that's going towards the characters. And then from there, we've got like the hit impact. And so you just kind of break it down into like what the particles are, which part of this is maybe either here or there, because you might have done some of it with the designers and with the mock-up stuff that you made for the designers and they hooked it all up. But in general, that's kind of the workflow. And so from there, you're just making the particle effects and tweaking and making sure they're hooked up. And hopefully you have animations by this point from the character people. But if you don't, just do as best as you can with what you got. And, you just refine and refine and refine and refine. And, the art director, eventually once you're ready, you say, hey, man, come check this thing out. And they'll say, I either like it or I don't. And you just keep iterating until they're happy. And then sometimes if they're not happy, but you are, just make that call yourself. And go with it anyway. That was what I did.
So on average, like for instance, that ice attack, how many hours or weeks does it take to put together just one effect for production ready? Because eventually you got to say enough is enough, right?
Yep. Eventually you have to say enough is enough. Just depends on what's on your plate during your particular sprint, if that's what y'all do at your studio. But with me, I would try and get it knocked out within a couple days because I just had so much on my plate. Some things, like say if it's like an ultimate or something, right? I mean, it's like the big thing for a certain character. In this case, we're talking about a magic game or whatever. Like the ultimate, I mean, that thing could take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get right. Hopefully studios can give you that much time because, it's the big pivotal moment for a certain character or for a fight or whatever. And it's like, this is the most awesome part of the whole game is the ultimates. And so, you need to spend a lot of time on that. And then it goes back to color and shape and timing and all that stuff. And that stuff, it just takes a while to get right. And it takes a while to get, everything, fitting well with the environments and all that stuff. And so it's just a huge iterative process. And that's where, having tools that help you do this stuff faster is going to come into play here in the future. Just because, if you're sitting around messing with, whatever, and maybe you're trying to render some kind of icy thing or whatever, and it's taking 12 hours, I mean, it just extends the amount of time that it takes to do this effect. And if you need it in 3 days, then that's a problem whenever your tools suck. So
for sure, man. And I know a lot of us beginning artists are still learning, a lot of us being self-taught. And speaking of being self-taught, YouTube's a great resource to go out there and watch tutorials and to really become better artists and just learning the crafts. And you're pretty popular on YouTube. You've made some really amazing tutorials, one of them being your Fireball and your Blood tutorials that you did in Unreal. And I was just wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about why you made those, and are there more coming?
In terms of, are more tutorials coming? Hopefully. If time permits, I really hope that I can unleash some more of my knowledge and put it out there on YouTube. The videos have been quite successful, and if you guys don't know what the YouTube channel is, it's JangaFX Software and Tutorials. You just search that in YouTube and you can find it. So yeah, I mean, definitely, I created them because there's not enough tutorials out there. Some of the tutorials that are out there, they're not made by VFX artists, and a lot of them might not be the best way to do things or whatever. And so I feel like there's a gigantic void in tutorials. Whenever I got started way back when, there was nothing. 2010, 2012, 2014, nothing on the internet that I ever found. And it was just no tutorials. And so, there was some cool stuff that you could find typically. And I can't say there wasn't anything, because there was VFX. But it was UDK specific, and it didn't really help me with Source Engine. But it was good to see, what someone who's had a lot of production experience could do. So yeah, so that's why I created it, just because I had knowledge and I just want to help people and teach people and just, give them the resources that they need to succeed. And even if there are tutorials out there on, making these particle effects, they often don't cover the material creation side and the texture painting side. And that goes back to what I wish I had known, is I wish I knew texture stuff. And so once I figured it out, the slightest, I am nowhere near as good as most VFX artists. But I was like, I know enough to make something look good. And so let me share that knowledge with somebody. And so that's why I created it.
Right. And I recently heard from somebody, I can't remember which VFX artist this was, they said like 90% of the work that you do in a particle effect is actually the material and the texture. And I thought that was really interesting.
That is so true.
So recently, you've moved from doing visual effects, as you said, more into being an entrepreneur and a manager and managing a team. So I'm just curious what that transition's been like and how it's changed your way of working.
So, it's a huge, gigantic jump from, working in a studio and having a safe paycheck and all that stuff. But it was a risk that I was willing to take. And, JangaFX has been my baby for years at this point, and it's finally off the ground. And we've got, studios purchasing. And I said, you know what? I think it's time to go full time into the company and bring our people on full time and that kind of stuff. And so, I just pulled the trigger on it and didn't think twice. And yeah, and then from there, managing a team, it is hard. And
How
then
so?
just trying to conveying vision and conveying timelines and deadlines and stuff like that. One of the big things is you have a timeline for something and it is almost never met. And that's not to say that programmers are bad or artists are bad or whatever, they suck at the job or whatever. It's just things take longer than you think that they do. It's the same way in the game industry. That's why games are delayed all the time, because this kind of stuff, the creative work, it just takes so much time. And we often underestimate how much time is going to be spent on it. And so that makes management really hard and makes predicting, when updates are coming out and all that kind of stuff really difficult. So I haven't really mastered it yet. And then, more like the business side of things, managing a business is just difficult as well. There's just so much crap that comes your way. And, taxes and this and that and, maybe an audit every now and then and just all kinds of crap. So it's really, really risky, but I like it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the challenge. And one of the other big things is having to watch out for competing software and stuff like that and being more in tune with the industry and things. So it's definitely a huge change from, I'm just making visual effects and then I go home and enjoy some games and stuff to, now my full-time thing is trying to pay pay for everyone else's paychecks and and all that stuff. And so it's like all my decisions affect the downline of everybody, right? And so I at first, whenever I was working in a studio, it's like, oh, the CEO should just do this. Right? And now that I'm in the position, I'm like, oh, now I know why they did those things. And, it's really daunting whenever your decisions are affecting 20 or 30 mouths on the downline with children and all that stuff and whatnot. So with all your employees, it's scary.
Well, you've been doing it for a little while now. I'm curious, do you have any advice or insight that you could offer to maybe first-time entrepreneurs or people looking to start their own game company or their visual effects studio? Just how to get started?
Well, I think that the best way to get started is just to put one foot in front of the other. Just don't stop. If you've got an idea, just roll with it. Just go with it. And, with me, I'm not really let me plan my business. It's, let me just do some stuff. Then we'll come up with a plan later if it starts working. And so, just put all your effort into it and just go for it. I mean, that's what I did with my particular company. And, it was a big struggle for a couple of years. And, our first tool, it performed okay. And, had some big studios adopted and whatnot. And that was cool. A little bit of a taste of success. But then I figured, hey, we kind of need to pivot and offer a new product and really, really make an impact on the industry and make some waves. And so I was like, oh, well, can we do that? So yeah, but that's my advice is just keep going. Just don't quit. If you're starting something or you make a game on the side or whatever, like you just have to keep going. I mean, the point whenever you want to quit, that is the point where everyone else quits. And that's when you have to just keep on doing it. And you got to push through the grind. And then eventually, on the other end, you've got a nice, shiny, golden egg. And then you throw it at Steam and the Epic Game Store and all that stuff. It sells like hotcakes. So, yeah.
All right, Nick, we are going into the lightning round questions now. Fast and easy, just like visual effects, getting you off the ground. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
What is a perfect one-day getaway in Cary, North Carolina, or the surrounding area?
So Cary's where I live, and I think that the perfect one-day getaway is going for a hike, a pretty big hike at Umstead Park. It's a really nice hiking area, and then after getting lunch at Dame's Chicken and Waffles, the best fried chicken and waffles on this planet,
yummy.
Hands down.
My mouth's just salivating right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's awesome. That's the best getaway.
So, what's video game or app are you using on your phone that is most fun?
So, I don't really play any things on my phone in particular. I think that probably the thing is I think it's called like the Calm app, where you do meditation and that kind of stuff. I think that's probably my number one. And then there's also another one. I think it's Waking Up with Sam Harris. That's another good mind calming app, and that's probably where I spend most of my time on my phone if I'm there.
I love meditation apps. Me and my girlfriend do it every other night, so it really helps us kind of forget about what happened that day and de-stress, so we go to bed with a clear mind.
Exactly. Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Highly recommended.
What was the name of the app again?
It's Waking Up with Sam Harris. It might just be called Waking Up on the App Store, but it's pretty good.
Okay. What is your favorite thing to cook or eat?
My favorite thing to cook is probably spaghetti. I mean, I just had that today, actually. Spaghetti and garlic bread, definitely my top favorite. Just meat sauce, all that stuff. It's real good. That's the best.
You're not half Italian, are you?
Nope, not half Italian.
What is your favorite book or podcast you've listened to recently?
In terms of favorite book, probably The Three-Body Problem. I would totally butcher the artist's name. It's a Chinese name, so I won't even try and say it. But yeah, Three-Body Problem is my favorite book. And my favorite podcast is probably Penn Sunday School. It's a great, comedic type show, and I just really enjoy listening to it. It's probably my go-to for podcasts.
The Three-Body Problem is Liu Cixin, Cixin. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah, I get you. Chinese.
Yeah. Chinese name. Don't know it, but it's a really good book. Really, it deals with like VR and stuff, so it's a really cool book.
So what is your favorite video game visual effect you're jealous of that is not your own?
In Half-Life 2 Episode 2, there was this scene where the big advisor worm thing threw you and Alex against these poles, and it just ripped rip this barn apart. I mean, it was probably one of the most incredible moments that I had ever seen in a video game. And just all the destruction, the effects and stuff. I mean, it was just so good. I am so jealous. So jealous that that's not my effect. It was great.
Cool, man. I can tell. Definitely a Half-Life fan here. The new VR game's coming out soon, so get your headset ready.
I got one. I'm ready.
Best advice for a first-time visual effects artist or people looking to get into the industry?
Try and download Paragon assets, or download Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and install the toolkits and stuff like that, and dissect the work of professionals. That is how I learned. I think that, of course, you can learn through tutorials and stuff, but, looking through the work of an actual professional in the industry, and there are games out there that let you view that kind of stuff, just go do that. Look at how they did it and tweak the parameters and try and figure out, why this looks good and what the components of this effect are and things like that, especially the Paragon assets with Unreal. I mean, there's just so many incredible things you can learn, and a lot of it is even over my head. And so it's a bit overwhelming, but I mean, if you go in there and just try and make stuff and, mishmash particles together, you'll learn much faster than you probably could from a tutorial, which is very linear and focused towards one thing. So that's my advice, is go pick apart professional work.
Yeah, and we can get those on the Unreal Marketplace, and it's completely free too, which is the best part, guys. You can go in there and download them and check them out. What is the thing you are most excited about for the future of real-time visual effects?
I think that the thing that I'm most excited about, I mean, it's a bit biased on my end, but just real-time tools. I mean, and then not only that, but expanding what's possible in games. So, fully volumetric 3D explosions and just things that are just engulfing buildings and just full-on destruction and just more power and more blowing up stuff. That's definitely another thing. And getting things closer to real life. I mean, that is what I am most excited about. And I hope we can get there. I hope GPUs are powerful enough eventually to handle all this stuff, but we've got tight budgets right now. But definitely that's what I'm most excited about. It's just progressing, how much can we push, our graphics cards and stuff. That really excites me.
Hey, I'll never say no to more explosions.
Exactly.
What question do you never get asked that you wish you were asked more often?
I guess probably just stuff about my business, like what's my story? I don't really get people asking me about it. I guess I just wish more people would ask me, because I love to tell people about it, or, why I did what I did and that kind of thing. People are just like, oh, okay. And so, I mean, everybody likes to talk about themselves. And so I wish that someone would ask.
Nick, you got any final thoughts or things to plug? Anything you want to share?
Definitely my plug is our tools and our website. So JangaFX.com. So that's JANGAF, the letter F, and then X.com. So JangaFX.com. And we have a tool called EmberGen. It allows you to simulate explosions and fire and smoke and magic and just all kinds of cool stuff, and then output those textures straight to a game, within seconds. And so it's definitely the future. And so go check it out. Go check out our tools and let us know your thoughts on it. We want your feedback. And so go try it.
Thanks, Nick, man. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me on here, Travis. I really appreciate it.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this interview with Nick Seavert. He is such a smart guy who's making huge advancements for the VFX community. If you want to support him, go ahead and try some of the tools he and his team are making at JangaFX.com. I'll be sure to leave some links in the show description. As always, I'm open to collect feedback from you guys. I'm seriously looking for some interesting topic ideas that you want to hear about. Go ahead and email me any questions you may have at travismccollum86@gmail.com. I promise I read every email and respond back within a day or two. Our next episode is an interview with Niels DeWitt, a really talented VFX artist working in Japan right now. You'll get to hear about what it's like to move across the world in a different culture and adapting your work and lifestyle to match. Until next time, rock on!